The airport buzzed with its usual mix of tired travelers, rolling suitcases, and last-minute announcements. Among them was 12-year-old Jordan, quietly waiting to board his flight with his sleek black backpack, a gift from his father, one of the youngest black billionaires in the country. Jordan wasn't dressed like a kid from wealth. He wore simple clothes, headphones around his neck, and the kind of calm confidence that made him seem older than his years. As the boarding line grew, a flight attendant noticed his bag placed neatly by his feet. Without asking, she nudged it aside with her foot, muttering something under her breath about kids taking up space. Jordan froze, unsure if he should speak up or stay quiet. Passengers nearby glanced over, but quickly looked away, pretending not to notice. The flight attendant's tone grew sharper as she scolded him for blocking the aisle, unaware of who she was talking to, or what was about to happen next. Just as Jordan was about to apologize for something he didn't do, a tall man in an elegant suit stepped onto the plane. His presence shifted the air, instantly confident, commanding, yet calm. The murmurs began almost immediately. The flight attendant's eyes widened as she recognized him. Jordan looked up, relief and quiet pride flickering across his face. The man smiled gently at his son before turning toward the attendant. The entire cabin fell silent, waiting to see what the billionaire CEO would say next. The man's name was David Cole, a self-made billionaire and CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the world. But to Jordan, he was just Dad, the one who still made pancakes on Sundays and reminded him to stay humble, no matter how much money they had. As David looked at the flight attendant, his expression stayed calm, almost too calm, but his eyes carried a quiet authority that made even the busiest passengers pause. The flight attendant quickly straightened up, her tone shifting as she realized who he was. "Oh, I didn't know he was with you, sir," she said nervously, forcing a smile. David didn't respond right away. Instead, he crouched beside Jordan, checking that his backpack wasn't damaged. The simple act made everyone watch in silence. Jordan's small nod told him everything. David then stood, his voice firm but even. "It's not about who he's with," he said softly. "It's about how you treat people when you think no one's watching." The cabin grew quieter, and even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. The attendant looked flustered, trying to explain herself, but David simply looked toward the rows of watching passengers. Some lowered their eyes in discomfort, others stared in admiration. Jordan shifted slightly, unsure if things would calm down or get worse. Before anyone could speak again, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, calling for a brief delay. David turned toward the cockpit with a look that hinted he wasn't done yet. As the captain's announcement ended, David guided Jordan to their seats, but the quiet tension in the air didn't fade. The other passengers whispered softly, curious yet cautious. Some recognized David from business magazines and interviews, while others just sensed that something important had unfolded. Jordan sat by the window, his hands resting on his backpack. He didn't say much, but his mind replayed the moment over and over, the way the flight attendant's tone had changed so suddenly. The attendant, clearly uneasy, tried to go about her duties as if nothing had happened, though her face betrayed her discomfort. Every few minutes, her eyes flicked toward David and Jordan, as if searching for reassurance that the situation was forgotten. But David's calm demeanor only made it harder to read him. He was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to make a point. Meanwhile, a businessman seated across the aisle leaned closer to his companion. "That's David Cole," he whispered, "the billionaire who bought Skyjet's parent company last quarter." The words spread like a quiet wave through the cabin, and soon the entire section knew who had just been disrespected. Jordan glanced up at his father, noticing how still he remained, lost in thought. He wondered if his dad would let it go, or if this moment meant something more. David's phone buzzed with a message from his assistant, ironically, about an upcoming meeting with Skyjet's board. He looked at the screen, then at the trembling flight attendant, and said quietly, "The plane remained grounded longer than expected, and the atmosphere grew heavier with every passing minute." David sat quietly, his expression unreadable, while Jordan pretended to scroll through his tablet, though his mind was far from calm. The flight attendant moved nervously down the aisle, her hands trembling slightly as she poured coffee for a passenger. She kept glancing toward the front, where David sat, her earlier confidence replaced with unease. Finally, the captain stepped out of the cockpit, adjusting his hat as he approached David's row. "Mr. Cole," he began carefully, "I understand there's been a misunderstanding. We just want to make sure everything is all right before takeoff." His polite tone carried an undercurrent of tension, aware of who he was addressing. Passengers leaned in slightly, sensing that something important was unfolding. David looked up, his voice calm but steady. "A misunderstanding," he repeated. "That's one way to put it. I'd call it a moment that shows how easily respect can disappear when titles aren't visible." The captain nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Jordan watched his father, realizing this wasn't just about a backpack, it was about something much deeper. The attendant stood a few rows away, visibly pale, clutching a tray she'd forgotten to set down. David's phone vibrated again, another message flashing across the screen. * board meeting confirmed. Topic: Staff conduct and inclusivity training. *. He looked at the screen, then at the captain, and the silence stretched thick with the sense that something big, was about to happen. Just as the captain was about to respond, a voice came crackling over the intercom from the gate. "Attention crew, we have a special update regarding passenger documentation. Please hold the aircraft." Everyone looked up, confused. The captain frowned, excused himself, and hurried toward the cockpit. David's gaze followed him calmly, but something about the timing felt too precise to be random. Jordan noticed the slight shift in his father's posture, quiet alertness he'd only seen during important business deals. Moments later, the captain returned, his tone suddenly uneasy. "Mr. Cole, it appears there's been an issue with your reservation. Your seats weren't officially cleared under your company account." The cabin stirred with murmurs. The same flight attendant, still shaken, stood by the galley, her eyes widening as she realized how serious this was becoming. David leaned back, his calm never breaking. "That's strange," he said evenly, "because I own the company that manages this airline's accounts." The entire cabin went still. Even Jordan's eyes widened at his father's words. Passengers exchanged looks, whispering to each other in disbelief. The flight attendant's face drained of color as she realized who she had actually insulted her. Employer's employer. The captain swallowed hard, looking down at his tablet, then back at David. "Sir, I'm going to make a call," he said quietly. David nodded once. "Do that," he replied. But as the captain turned away, David's phone buzzed again with a message that made his expression change instantly. Something even bigger was happening, and it wasn't just about this flight. David looked at his phone, his expression tightening just enough for Jordan to notice. The message came from his assistant. *breaking. Video of the flight attendant incident is going viral. Media already calling. He slowly set the phone down, realizing the situation had already spread far beyond the cabin. The captain returned, looking pale but composed. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "our headquarters just called. They confirmed your credentials and asked me to extend an apology on behalf of the airline." The passengers murmured as the truth sank in. The very man sitting quietly in first class wasn't just a wealthy traveler, he was the man whose signature could change the future of the airline itself. The flight attendant stepped forward, trembling, her earlier authority replaced by regret. "Sir, I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't mean to be disrespectful." David stood slowly, his tone steady but powerful. "That's the point," he said. "Respect shouldn't depend on who someone is." The entire cabin was silent, listening. For a moment, his words hung heavy in the air. Then, just as it seemed things were calming, another message flashed across his screen, this time from the board chair. They found irregularities in the staff training budget, the same team that hired this crew. David's eyes narrowed slightly. The pieces started to connect. This wasn't just about a rude moment, it was part of something deeper within the airline. He turned toward the captain, voice calm but sharp. "After we land," he said, "I'll be calling a meeting." The tension broke, but everyone knew this story wasn't over yet. The rest of the flight continued in complete silence. Passengers sat quietly, processing everything that had happened. The flight attendant moved carefully through the aisle, polite but distant, clearly thinking about the words David had said. Jordan leaned against the window, his eyes half closed, feeling proud of his father but also thoughtful. He finally understood that his dad's strength didn't come from money or power, it came from the way he handled people. Even in moments of unfairness,